Well, today is a really special day for me because I get to sit with one of my most adored people and a dear friend of mine. And I also learned a new word to call you, and I would call you a gallerist in the studio Atlanta. So today we're in the space called Memento ATL, and I just want you to tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So Memento, we actually just came up on our 1 year anniversary. I didn't even remember until I got a notification on my phone. And so it was exactly 1 year ago we signed our lease.
Wow.
So yes, we're an art gallery in Atlanta, but also in like a very historic part of Atlanta. So like Ponce Highlands neighborhood. And so a building that's from the 1940s. It's, you know, it's a very unique space. It's very memorable. And so just trying to come up in the art scene in Atlanta and just do something like a little bit different.
Great. Well, we're going to get more into the journey of that and the details of it, but I did want to start by talking about the first time you and I met. Oh, because I just feel like it's such a unique story. It is so special. But I think people don't know this, but I slid into your DMs.
Yes, you definitely did, but you stood out, honestly, immediately.
Yeah.
Just saying, because this is also like very beginning stages of Memento, and we had just had our first documentary screening, but we didn't even have artwork on the walls at that point. So I was super surprised that you knew what Memento was. And just something about your message, you had so much like energy, and I could just see you're like, buzzing with ideas. So I was like, let's meet.
Yeah, that's me. I remember I messaged you, and the next day you're like, well, I'd love to hear more about this. So tell me more about like what your first impression of that encounter was when I came.
Well, I just felt like immediately comfortable with you. Like, I think I said this, but I was like, I feel like I've known you for much longer, maybe in a past life or something like that. But you just seemed like very put together, and I loved hearing about your story, like kind of being in a completely different field, like really going from that to pursuing something that you were even more passionate about. So instantly I felt a connection with that. I kind of come from more of an advertising background. So, for me to kind of veer off and be like, I'm just going to start an art gallery.
Right.
I felt like we had a lot of commonalities.
And we did. I do feel like you're chosen. And your story was very much like mine, where we just like took the leap and took a risk with our dreams and also just forging our own pathway. So the name Memento is really special. I think it stands out to a lot of people. And it's funny that it says Memento, but because it really like sticks in people's memory. And I just wanted to talk about the name because a lot of people associate that with Memento Mori, which I know has to do with like the memory of like you dying or just like knowing that you're going to die. And we discussed previously that it's not necessarily the meaning you have behind it, even though it is kind of like a theme that is intertwined. So tell me about why you chose Memento to be the name of this gallery.
Yes, we were kind of going back and forth on so many different names. And when my business partner, Brianna, and we were just, literally just going back and forth. And then we both said Memento. And we had that discussion. Okay, when you think of Memento, what comes to mind immediately is the idea of, this remembrance of, that we're all going to die, Memento Mori. And so then I was trying to take a spin on it, which is Memento Vitae, which is to remember that you must live, in the moment and that you are living now. So how can we make the most of that? But what it really comes from is this idea that there's so many memories within these items or artifacts that we collect. When you go into someone's home and they're so excited to show you what's, on their bookshelf or something, they're like, well, I collected this when I did this. And it's like you can see that instant connection between them and these like little artifacts of very important times in their lives. And so for Memento, like I want people to look at the artwork as this kind of like fossilized memory that they have, not just from the artist and how they created it, but also from their experience viewing the artwork.
With that in mind, what makes this space so special in Atlanta is obviously what it looks like and the design that you've created. And I just want to know more about your inspiration behind the feng shui or just the way you are. And I love being around you because you're so particular about like everything and how you display it. You're really creating an emotion. And where do you get that from?
I definitely get a lot of it from my mother. So my mom is an interior designer. So just growing up, the way that she could transform a room and just instantly make us like our entire moods would shift just by, wall paint or something like that. And so I think I was kind of like very sensitive to those things. And I've just always been kind of watching her do it. So when I came into this space and I saw these, beautiful white granite walls, in my mind, immediately, I was like, I cannot wait to hang artwork from the ceiling, hanging right off of these walls. So you have this like sense of emphasis, sense of texture and everything, that you don't typically see when you walk into an American art gallery. Like you see that a lot in Europe. And so, trying to bring in those ideas and then doing a Mario Bellini sofa, I got everything in here off of Facebook Marketplace, and everyone thinks that's like the most wild story. But, I drove to Tennessee for this, Mario Bellini sofa. And I think that just having a space that someone can visualize the artwork in their home and like what even their home could look like, I think that's really important. It kind of goes to that memento aspect of, okay, how can I take this piece of artwork and make it like something very special, conversation starter in my home?
Of course, I have to talk about your astrological placement because I know so much about it, but also what people don't know, they probably don't know, is that you're a Libra. And a Libra like represents balance, and it's ruled by the planet of Venus, which is like the planet that rules like beauty and like exterior. Do you identify with that need for like beauty in your space and like the need for balance, and how does that translate into how you created Memento?
100%. If I walk into a room and it has fluorescent lighting, I will just leave. I just refuse. There's just, so many things about a space that, are important to how we feel and how even our conversation is going to go, like even for this interview, like, let's be around all the plants. Let's be in front of this, huge industrial window. And, it's kind of just like it creates like a little bit of a portal into, the way that our minds are working at that time.
So what most people do not know is that you are an Atlanta native and you're born here, and then you left and went to my city, which we'll reveal in a bit. And then you came back to Atlanta to basically bring this art scene to Atlanta. And I know you've been doing art for like your whole life. Like what people probably also don't know is like you put art on the walls, but you're also a brilliant artist. You're not going to call yourself that, but I think you're an amazing artist. And I just want to know more about like young Madison and like what her ambitions were starting off and how she expressed herself through her art, and also how that allows you to identify an artist.
Well, young Madison was very shy. I mean, like, would not be able to have like this conversation. I was very much more of like an observer. And, I think that also went into just like watching my mom and her design, and then also just like watching at how other people interacted. So I thought like the best way for me to kind of like understand how to connect with people was to do portraits. So I started painting with my grandma. She's just like a really amazing painter, actually over in Smyrna. And through that, I would just like, very awkwardly ask people, hey, can I do a portrait of you? And then for some reason, when I was doing it, I just felt more confident in like talking. So I just did that. And, that just like helped all the way up to high school. And, that's actually what got me into school, is like those portraits that I was doing. They just kind of evolved, and I was using, well, I still do it when I have spare time, which is like not at all these days. But I do chalk pastel on velour paper. So it's like this paper that feels like velvet, and the chalk pastels like just really pick up this like the pigment. But what's also really interesting, and it goes back to this like sense of memory, is that the the pieces actually fade over time because it is that chalk. So it's almost like a memory fading, of like even just a person. So, memories are very like embedded into all the works that I do. And like, those early ages were just so pivotal for me to figure out like who I was going to be as a person. And I did that by literally painting other people.
What's your favorite memory? Speaking of memories, what's your favorite memory as a young person?
So one of my strangest memories, and I would say it was also like an amazing memory because that's kind of when I got to get in touch a little bit with, like my family that I didn't know a lot about. So a lot of people, when they look at me, they're like, okay, there's no way that you're, mixed with anything. But my mom is actually Pakistani. And so you saw, she's Pakistani and she looks just like me, but she's just, got the darker skin and she's got this like beautiful long brown hair. But I'll never forget, I was in 5th grade and my grandfather, his name is Akbar Lodi, he came to live with us in my family. And he moved in, he's like, he was this very old Pakistani man who was blind at the time. And so we like set up ropes all around the house. But for some reason, like his gift, like what he was meant to do in life was to cook. He would cook the most amazing foods. He had a restaurant in Pakistan. And so when he came, he was still cooking, even though he was just like completely blind. And so I just literally, like, I was just watching every single second because it was just all so new and different to me. But like the smells, like of all the spices that he would use, like those are like very ingrained in my memory. It was just like a very important time in my life.
The usage of your senses.
Yeah, exactly.
So where in Atlanta are you from?
So I grew up like Vinings area, Buckhead Vinings, and I was there for, until I was 18. So in the same house pretty much.
So after you graduated high school, you went to my city, which is New York, the Big Apple. It's a very different city from Atlanta, especially at that time, I'm sure. But how was that move? Where'd you go to school? What'd you study?
So I went to Parsons and I loved it. When I first moved there, I was like a fish out of water. I was 18 and I was like, what am I doing here? This is too crazy for me. But I kept going and I stayed through. Everyone, when they go to art school in New York, you have to do like a foundation year. And so that's when they're telling you, okay, make a chair tonight when you go home. And it's like, I came here for portrait. And like, I don't know how to make a chair.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of people go into Parsons and a lot of people leave Parsons, but I had the pleasure and the privilege to go there for all of undergrad. And then also I stayed there for grad school. So that's why I ended up being in New York for 10 years because I basically just wouldn't leave Parsons. By the end, they were just like, get out of here, go.
Spread your wings.
Yeah, spread your wings. But, it has a very special place in my heart, for sure.
I know college was like a really pivotal point for me, like discovering who I was as a creative and like finding confidence in that. And do you have any like stories or memories from that time or like anything that really made an impact on you to know that like you wanted to take this risk and come out to Atlanta?
Definitely. I mean, I think the biggest one that comes to mind that kind of just rocked everyone's world in New York was COVID. So when I was in grad school, I had started a small kind of like a creative arts events company with my two best friends who were also from Atlanta, and we all lived together. It was like we were just together 24/7. And the day that New York went into a state of emergency, we had our largest event ever, and it was for International Women's Day, of course. And we had, these like huge name people there that if they were to get sick, it would be all over the news. It was, it would have been, we had Suzanne Rockefeller there speaking. So
Suzanne?
Yeah, Suzanne. Love my Suzies. Yeah. And so we had to make that call. are you going to have the event and, get that recognition for having this large, beautiful event, or are you going to cancel it? And it was just such a hard decision. We ended up having the event and it went amazing and no one got sick, but it kind of just, it was one of those moments where I was like, all right, you need to trust your gut. And how can I take some of these like very risky and very like, oh gosh, it was just such a horrible feeling, of like, okay, which path do I take here? And kind of bring that into Memento and just always going with your gut.
Right.
Yeah.
Trusting your gut is really important. I think especially what you do. Mm-hmm. I think coming back to a city like this where I'm not from here, so I don't know how the art scene is or how it's received. I know in like cities like New York and Paris that I frequent a lot, they really do appreciate those things. So when you were making the decision to come to Atlanta, tell me about that process.
I got into a car. I literally got into a car and I looked at my then boyfriend, now husband. And for this reason, he's my husband and many other reasons. Yeah. But I said, hey, I have to move back to Atlanta. I can't afford my apartment anymore. All of the events that I had scheduled for the next 2 years were canceled in one day. And so, it was just kind of one of those moments where it's like, all right, I just need to go back to my roots, essentially, and start fresh. And so then once we got to Atlanta, like once I would say, the quarantine had stopped being so strict. I mean, it wasn't really that strict in Georgia comparison to New York, but once we were able to kind of get out and start going to art gallery events and seeing what Atlanta has to offer now, it was just a completely different place than what I had remembered. I feel like there's so many creative people here and so many people moving to Atlanta also to pursue fashion or, they're trying to be an actor and film directors and all of these like beautiful people from all over the world. And then also just like a lot of local Atlanta true talent. But I didn't know where to go to kind of like hang out with all of these people. And I just noticed that there wasn't a lot of gallery options that I knew about at that time. Like now I've heard of a lot more, but they're all kind of like more like underground. So, I was like, all right, well then I'll just create the space that I would like to go to as like someone moving back to their hometown and just kind of like relearning their creative scene.
Yeah. I think COVID was such a special time, even though it was a crazy time and we lost a lot of people. It was very devastating. But I think it was kind of like a make it or break it moment for a lot of people, including myself, where it's like you had to make a decision of like whether you were going to just pursue something that was more secure in a time that was extremely insecure, or choose something that was insecure in a time that is extremely insecure. And I think COVID was so interesting because it was like kind of like two negatives making like a positive. And now we have Memento. I do know that Memento is heavily European inspired. And you and I talk about Europe all the time and like we love going, man, and just being surrounded by it. So I just wanted to know, like, I know you've been to Europe. Just wanted to know like how that like influences you as a person, the type of art that you make, the type of aesthetic that you like to present to the world. And if you plan on taking your aesthetic from Atlanta and taking it to Europe.
Oh my God. That's definitely, I feel like right now I've just been kind of thinking of like in the present and there's so many different opportunities for the future. But right now, like my focus is very much Atlanta and how can I bring like those European influences to Atlanta while also, kind of uplifting some of the creatives in Atlanta. Like my biggest thing is I want to pair a New York City artist with a local Atlanta artist or, a Parisian artist with a local Atlanta artist, because I feel like just by doing that alone, you're kind of bringing together people who might not have met before. It's like even though they're two different aesthetics, like how can there be collaboration, and like how can you kind of just see what happens from there. Like that's where like the pure magic comes in. Like I feel like that was like we're kind of collaborators in a sense in that way. And yeah, so I hope that answered the question.
No, it does. And I think that's probably why we get along so well, because I love that. I love bringing two things that people don't necessarily think make sense, and then like seeing how that evolved, because that's just how art transforms. And also like it's a representation of our actual society. With our phones, we're literally like clashing everything and learning everything at the same time. And then it makes us, where you are right now and who I am. But like I deem you as a chosen one. I really do. I think what you're doing is so special, and you were chosen for that. But with being chosen, there's a lot of sacrifices that come with it. And with my first documentary, I feel like I identified, what it is to be chosen. And then through the process of making it, I understood that the path is not glamorous. It's not something that is easy. And I felt like with case study, I wanted to highlight what the process is. It's my responsibility to tell you, like, if I'm going to tell you you're chosen, it's also to tell you, it's not like the easiest thing ever to pursue that and to choose it back. Mm-hmm. So what are some sacrifices that you feel like you've made or you're still making to really build this space up from the ground up?
I mean, there's been a lot of sacrifice. Like, it goes to say, there's just the immediate things that you think of first, like, sleep, and you're constantly running around, going from one meeting to the next. But then there's also certain things like, I traded out my car. Like I had, a different car, and then now I have a minivan so I can like transport the artwork and things like that. And so, now I'm bopping around in my little minivan and people are like, what is this? What are you doing? But, I think that that's kind of important, is like you have to make certain sacrifices so you can do your best. And, like not seeing friends and family as much, like that's definitely been a hard one, but you just got to keep moving forward, I would say.
Yeah. And when you're chosen, you're not going to be living your Dolce Vita lifestyle forever. There's going to be a lot of like times, like for me, I'm away from all my family and friends. Sometimes it is hard, but I know that I'm here for a reason, so that I can get to a place where I could just bring them wherever I am. So I totally understand.
And your family is the best, and they're so proud of you. That's all I gotta say.
They do. They support me a lot. Oh, yeah, I was to have that. Yeah. But, with the risks that you have taken and where you are now, even though it's only been a year since you signed the lease, have you seen the reward?
Definitely. I would say I have seen a lot of people in Atlanta who are like interested in Memento, and I'm getting some pushback, from certain creative scenes in Atlanta. And what I would like to just take from that is, okay, I want those people to come and meet me and see who I am as a person. And, like I want to have a discussion with them so that they can see that, like, I think that we need to all work together, because that's the only way that Atlanta is going to become an international art destination, is if we all come together and we all, try and uplift each other. So whether it I would love to ask anyone in Atlanta who's been in this creative scene for a really long time, like, just want to sit down and be like, what does it take? Like I want to hear their experience as well. Right. So that's something that I'm like hopefully really looking forward to.
Yeah, and that you're a very humble person, but I do want you to talk about like what do you think you're bringing to the scene that they can use, for anybody that would be watching, just anyone that wants to know about Memento, what is Memento bringing that is lacking?
First and foremost, we are female run and female operated. So one thing that even when I first came to Atlanta, and I didn't know that I was going to move back at this time. I thought that I was going to move back to New York once, the craziness of COVID went away, but that just never happened. And so I was asking some gallery owners, okay, well, like, what is the comparison of female to male artists? And there was always more male artists. And, something that's very important to me in Memento is how can we have like equal representation, amongst all different cultures, backgrounds, and, ages as well. I'm not just going to choose artists who are doing really well in Atlanta. Like, I want to bring in artists who do artwork in the backyard because that's what they love to do and they can't afford a studio space. How can I make it so that person is, able to pay their rent because they can be a full-time artist in the near future? So, I would say that's something that I'm very diligent about considering those particular things. Like right now, one of our female artists, she's crushing it. She's doing the best out of any artist right now. And
she's sick. Yeah, shout out Pilar.
Pilar, yeah. That's literally right here.
Literally.
And, she also has said to me, she was like, it just feels good to be in a creative space with, some more like female energy.
Absolutely. And I also knew you had really good taste a little down the line when we were working, because I had posted a picture on Instagram of me in like a Kid Cudi sweater. And then you DM'd me and you were just like, I love him and I love Intergalactic. And he's my favorite artist of all time. And I just feel like, me personally, I'm a little biased, but anyone that likes his work, especially his film, like has to be a person of great taste. And you were telling me briefly about like how much that film meant to you. And it's a little off topic, but I think it shows a lot about who you are. I just wanted to know like that in more detail. Like, how did you feel watching that?
I think I've watched it 15 times at this point. My husband and I, we watch it all the time. It's just one of those movies that we put on if we've had a stressful day. Just because when I think of Kid Cudi, I mean, talk about so true to your craft. And also he's so innovative in his field. I mean, by creating an album that's also, another extension is this animated film that also speaks about him and his, taste for art. Like even when he was in his home and he was, moving around his art collection, like that was very important because it just shows how like diverse he is, like from a creative lens. And I'm a sucker for animated movies. I could watch them over and over and over again. So I just thought it was absolutely incredible and love all of his music as well.
Finally, I just want to ask you like any advice that you have for people that are, or maybe just like a young Madison or people that are growing up like you and want to take risks and want to infiltrate a space, an art space, or any space at all. Like, what do you think, like any mantras you have for them?
So I actually had a professor in undergrad and they asked us to write a letter to our younger selves. And it was super important for me because I did change so much as a person, like just from being like very shy and reserved to, kind of like, I would say sometimes I'm a little bit risky. I'm like, all right, I want to start this art gallery. I'm going to start this events company right before COVID, like all these different things. And so in my letter, I definitely spoke to just being true to yourself. And even though that you are changing and you're stepping out of your comfort zone, like be true to your morals, be true to things that are very important to you, your values, your ethos. I think that's what's really important because it is scary to kind of go out into a field that you don't have. Like, I've never owned a gallery before. So, I wasn't previously a gallerist, and just doing it and holding on to the people that are going to help you along the way and always giving them the support and also, the credit that they deserve, because this Memento space was not just built by me. There's so many different people, you included, who has helped make it where it is today. And I just want that to grow and grow. And like the Memento community is the most important thing to me, for sure.
No, yeah. And you work with the best people. Brianna's brilliant. And even just having Rachel in here, it's like the best energy. And John is just willing to get down and dirty.
Yeah, John, my husband, hung every single piece of artwork in here. He does like a lot of installations.
And also Bo. We can't forget.
Oh my gosh, Bo, framer and also incredible artist.
Right. So him and Krista are just like really supportive of this space, and you can feel in the energy. Every person that I've met in this space, I like held on to them because they're just like the best people.
Well, and I keep telling them, you know, like I can't wait for us all to look back on the early Memento days.
Crazy.
And just kind of reminisce on what you know, what it is now, but like and how different it'll be then. You know, like what does Memento look like in 20 years? And I hope that we can all, you know, like have a really good conversation about it down the line.
Oh, it's gonna be a memento.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be a lasting memory, and you know, this space and then all the artwork.
Well, thank you for talking with me and being my first case study. Thank you for believing in me and trusting me with this story. And I can't wait to see where Memento goes, and you're really gonna change lives. You already changed mine, so I'm really proud of you.
Oh, well, I'm always honored to work with the Suzanne Barry, so.
Ride to the frog and nigga, rig on play.